Identity is a choice, a conscious choice, a choice abstracted and protected by a choice which is embedded and entangled in our humanness. Sounds a bit cryptic, isn't it? Let me explain. The way we speak, the way we present ourselves, the way we ask questions, the way we respond, the way we behave, collectively forms our identity, collectively forms who we are. When we meet someone, the first impressions, the appearance, the color, the style, they all trigger a very complex inner dialogue in our brain. And our cognitive processes evaluate these cues, these signals, this inner dialogue, and then decide and we choose what to say or how to behave. When we walk into a friend's living room and notice a couch which we may judge to be a bit loud in color, the shape may not be what we can approve on, but we decide that inner dialogue that's going on, which may not be always positive, to be responded as is, because most of us select complimentary words, not because that our inner dialogue is always purely positive, it may be negative, but because we choose not to hurt, offend, or judge someone. This choice of what to express and what to keep private is part of our identity or who we are. You could argue that this choice or choosing not to reveal our inner dialogue, whatever is going on in our brain, is an identity on its own, and you would be right. Those thoughts, those inner thoughts, as diverse as they may be and often contradictory, they remain private. And we decide what crosses that boundary between that private, they remain private. And we decide what crosses that boundary between that private mind and the public world. And that boundary is extremely essential. This boundary has allowed humans to coexist. This boundary is probably one of the strongest elements of our species. This boundary has allowed us to coexist in caves, to build tribes, to build societies, to create nations, and now to create digital civilization. Our identity has always depended on that privacy of our inner dialogue. Now, what happens if that boundary breaks? What if our inner thoughts, the last untouched frontier of privacy, are no longer private? Would challenge the identity that we possess at its core, and also our humanness, and has got implications because it would disrupt the very psychological architecture that we humans have created, the very psychological architecture which our species has relied upon for our own survival and is critical for our humanness and our social cohesion. And this is no longer theoretical. Let me go back a few years. I believe one way to predict the future is to look for evidences that will shape the future. One of the things that I do to predict the future is to scan the patents applied and published by significant companies around the world. And I remember in July 2023, I was scanning through the patents published or applied recently during July 2023, and I stumbled upon the patent. I remember it was on the 20th of July 2023 that patent was published, and it was interesting to me. My curiosity was heightened for that specific patent when I looked at the applicant's name. It was Apple. Yes, that Apple. The title of the patent was a bit, I would say, unassuming. It was a bit cryptic. It was called Biosignal Sensing Device Using Dynamic Selection of Electrodes. What does that even mean? If you pick the two critical words in that title, biosignal and electrodes. Let's talk about electrodes here. Electrodes here are EEG, electroencephalogram. So these electrodes are in the earpods that Apple creates, and the biosignals are brain signals. You heard that right, brain signals. So what does this mean here? In that patent, Apple has somehow managed to put in EEG electrodes in the earpods so that it can sense or read the biosignals. Yes, the brain signals. The idea is actually cute. If you have used ever the earpods or any such other wireless Bluetooth devices. Let's say you are listening to a curated Spotify song list and you don't like a specific song. Generally what you do is you double tap the AirPad and it skips to the next song and it remembers what you like or what you don't, and it creates a profile of the type of songs that you listen to or you like to listen to. Here the idea is, if you are listening to that curated Spotify song playlist and you don't like a specific song, the electrodes, the EEG electrodes in that earpod will just read and sense the biosignal, which is your brain signal, and it will just skip to the next one. Cute, isn't it? But what does that mean? If you just think over it logically without getting into any technicalities or any form of negative thoughts, this is the first time in the history of songs and maybe humanity when it's not just us listening to the songs, it's the songs listening to us as well, isn't it? And here, when I use the word us, it is a generalized representation of the thoughts that we have, thoughts that goes in our brain, in our private brain. And thoughts here are sensed by those electrodes packed in that earpods, and those thoughts as digital signals are then processed by trained machine learning models. And as you know, the earpods or any other such devices are then connected to an app on the mobile device using Bluetooth, and then to the cloud, and then to the internet. So this is the birth of the Internet of Thoughts. This is a term that I used in 2023 after I scanned through that patent and I published an article in Forbes with the exact same title, The Internet of Thoughts, the IoTH. This is the birth of a completely new internet, the Internet of Thoughts, the IoTH. Just to ponder upon that, portable EEG devices are not really new. They have been there for quite some time. I personally has been experimenting with one such devices called Muse, I believe in 2018, primarily for meditation. So you wear it on your head, it's almost like a headband, and it listens to the brain signals, the alpha, beta, gamma brain signals. And there used to be an app, and in that app there was some sort of very light music that used to come up, and you needed to listen to the light music. And then this portable EEG headband from Muse, it used to basically sense the brain signal to basically figure out if your brain is at an agitated state or it's calm or it needs to be made calm, and it used to give feedback. I had access to the SDK for that headband, and I experimented with that to actually read those brain signals and try to interpret that. So portable EEG devices has been there for quite some time, although we can argue that the form factor has not been something that we all would like to carry with us. So I don't want to carry around a headband on me while walking on the road. So that way, this patent from Apple makes much more sense now, because we all carry around our AirPods, so it's not an additional device. It's the same AirPod, but the EEGs are plugged into or added into that. So now that was 2023. Muse was 2018. As I said, I was experimenting on. I know there are more advanced Muse devices that has come up, but I was using their first or second version in 2018. Then 2023 was that patent published by Apple. So we are in 2026. What's the state of EEG device now, if you may ask? There are plenty of such devices, plenty of such companies doing it now. Emotiv, for example, they have earbuds similar to the AirPods, and they launched it in 2024. Neurable, they produce BCI, which is brain-computer interfaces devices, and they do it in headphones, not really AirPods, but headphones. NeuroSky, they produce those EEG chips for the developers to then program. Then there is OpenBCI, there is BrainCo, there is BitBrain, and there is Cognition. Cognition actually tries to help people with speech impairment with those devices, and they have been doing some very interesting clinical trials. And one of the things that Cognition did very interestingly is for the Apple Vision Pro devices, they added those EEG devices on the band that you use for Apple Vision Pro devices. And just to be clear and to warn you, this is not an exhaustive list. These are some of the interesting ones that I just wanted to share. There are many more. And interestingly, there are some which are a bit invasive, which needs to be implanted in your brain or inside your skull somewhere. which is scary, isn't it? One of them is BlackRock Neurotech, and this device needs to be implanted so that people with paralysis can then interact their thoughts to a machine. There is another one, Synchron, which does similar thing. It's an endovascular implant so that it can be added in your skull, inside your head, but without a brain surgery. And Elon Musk Neuralink, which has been used. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, just wanted to share a few. And then the idea of sharing these is that the Internet of Thoughts is no longer a distant idea. It has entered early reality, if not a mass market reality yet. It's not theoretical anymore. It's there, it's happening, it's now. And before getting into all the different implications of this new Internet of Thoughts, what do I think is the first casualty? I think the first casualty is security. I have been talking about the Internet not having an identity layer and the complications that we created in the digital world on passwords, OTPs, biometrics, and the complication where the fraudsters can steal those. I even talked about a side channel attack where the fraudsters, by just listening to the keystroke on a laptop or any other such device, can actually predict the password that you are typing. Here, it takes a quantum leap. You don't even need to type. You just think of that password and it's compromised through the Internet of Thoughts, because our thoughts connected to this Internet. And how it is going to evolve and how it will evolve in the future from where it is right now. To get a glimpse of that, let's see how the Internet has evolved. Let's look into Web 1.0. We never called it Web 1.0. So this is the original web, or the Internet, or the Internet of content. When the web or the initial Internet was created, it was mostly read-only. We were reading content, we were consuming content through various devices. Then in around 2000 and 2005, the Web 2.0 arrived, mostly by the infusion of mobile devices in our digital life and also in our organic life. And we started to write into the web. Today, around 95 million content is being written and created in Instagram. That's writing into the web. So the web started as a read-only internet, then moved into an internet where we write into as well. Now probably we write more than what we read. Now let's take the evolution of the next internet, the Internet of Things, the IoT. The IoT has made everything smart. The smart TV, the smart kettle, the smart houses, the smart cities. To make it smart, it is important to have read and write. In the IoT world, the different sensors, they read, and there are actuators which actually write, which means that we write into the actuators and then do some functions. For example, let's take the earlier version of the automated vehicles, the self-driving vehicles. They used to be these LiDARs, the light detection and ranging devices on top of these vehicles. These sensors, these LiDAR sensors, used to read any nearby obstacle on the path. For example, if there is a human walking around or there are some obstacle in front of these autonomous cars, these LiDAR sensors used to read them. Then the microprocessors in those autonomous cars, they used to process that information and they used to decide what needs to happen. And then if the microprocessor then decides that the car needs to be stopped, then these microprocessors used to write into the braking system so that that car can then stop. So for making anything smart in the IoT world, reading and writing was needed. Now, what about IoT? What about the Internet of Thoughts? Right now, as we saw, our thoughts can be read. Yes, there are implications, because as we discussed, thoughts or our inner thoughts are the last frontier in privacy. Our thoughts have always been private, and that's critical for our humanness. If they are read, yes, there are privacy implications. There are security implications, because all our thoughts, let's say our secret passwords, etc., they can be read and can be compromised. But the important thing is, can our thoughts be influenced? If we take the cues from the two variations of the internet, as I talked about, the web, the Internet of Content, which started as a read-only internet, then it started to become writable as well through all our feeds, through everything that we create in the social media, and then in the IoT, in the Internet of Thoughts, can't we just assume that the Internet of Thoughts as well will be writable at some point? Could these external systems plant impulses or directions into our cognitive flows? What does that mean? That could mean is you are walking with your AirPods on by the side of that fast food joint, and then a thought can be sent or written to your brain that you are hungry and you love that burger even if you're not hungry. That's manipulating our thoughts, that manipulating our identity, because you may not be a burger person, now you become a burger person. That manipulates our human needs. And you can think of much more scarier situations. And this is not a science fiction. What I am talking about here is a trajectory. What happens to our identity then? If our inner thoughts become extremely visible, they are not private anymore. If that cognitive boundary between what remains private in our mind and what becomes public dissolves, then identity is no longer a choice. Identity becomes exposed, it becomes manipulated, it becomes reprogrammed, and the psychological framework, the psychological architecture that governed our human behavior, our social interaction, the trust that we have built, the empathy and the conflict, they all become extremely destabilized. Our humanness gets challenged. And what other challenges we may face? This may challenge our societal norms. This may challenge our interpersonal relationship, our legal systems, our concept of autonomy, and our fundamental humanness. We suddenly start to face more questions than the answers we have. The purpose of me talking about this is not to paint a dystopian picture, although I have to agree the implications are undeniably very serious. I talk about it as a futurist because I explore the possibilities not to alarm but to prepare and to initiate a very important dialogue, because this impacts our humanness. We must shape this future intentionally and not accidentally. As always, we must humanize every technology, including Internet of Thoughts, and safeguarding the psychological, the social, and the ethical constructs that make us human. And as always, I remain optimistic. Let's humanize every technology that we build and we will be building. If this has given you thoughts to see the future differently, to start to think of the future in more hopeful way, please subscribe to my channel. I will be sharing and talking more about how I see the future, how I see the future of technology impact us humans and our humanness, how we can shape the future together. Please subscribe to my channel, and thank you very much.